Hey guys, what's good? It's the Tominator. So let's talk about the 2019 Vancouver Pro. I'm sure you've heard by now that Hadi Choopan won the show in rather convincing fashion, and that's no lie. It's not an exaggeration to say he dominated this men's open lineup, including Nathan De Asha, who, remember, was 8th place at last year's Mr. Olympia. Now granted, this wasn't the great version of De Asha. He was certainly harder and drier at the British Grand Prix a couple weeks ago, and since he already qualified by winning that show, he didn't need to bring his best to this event. But that certainly paved the way for an easy victory for Hadi, since none of these other guys, even on their best day, stood a chance against him when he's on. I mean, Hadi's conditioning was second to none, not even the likes of Lukas Osladil or Josh Wade, who are guys known for consistently bringing great conditioning, could hold a candle standing next to Hadi. But anyway, let's get into this and go through these mandatory comparisons, and we'll see just how badly he really ran away with this thing, alright? So, in the front double biceps, Hadi gets off to a good start because he takes this one. His biceps, quads, and abs were the best in the lineup, hands down. De Asha would probably be second, as he's the only other one who can really compare in terms of muscle mass through the arms and chest here. Osladil to his right and Josh Wade over there on the left look really good through the legs and have more balanced lower bodies when you factor in the calves. Plus, I do like the vacuum Wade is rocking. He's got a nice full ribcage, so it looks really good on him. But their upper bodies in general just look a little wonky to me. Josh Wade's arms are way too small for his torso, and Osladil's tilted stance is throwing off his symmetry. Iain Vailliere over there on the far right looks good overall, but his chest is a little small compared to the rest of his upper body, and his quads, which have some good size and sweep, could be a bit more separated. De Asha's torso is very elongated, and that kind of throws off his whole flow and proportions, plus he's not hard enough to hang with Hadi, especially through the legs. You can see that the Persian Wolf earns a clear-cut win in this shot. The front lat spread is a little more competitive, mainly because Hadi doesn't shine as much in this pose. Now, from a conditioning and muscularity standpoint, he still beats these guys. But structurally, I don't think he looks that great in this one. I don't see as much of a taper on him compared to, say, De Asha or Vailliere, with De Asha sporting the best X-frame in the lineup. For that reason, I would probably give it to Nathan here, perhaps more out of pity than anything else, because believe me, he's not going to win too much from here on out, guys. Actually, maybe I'd go with Iain since he looks big as a house upstairs. I don't know, it's tough to say just based on this. The lighting was a little too dark in some of these pics. Moving on to the side chest though, this is a decisive victory for Hadi Choopan. Along with the most muscular, this is probably his best shot because his combination of thickness, density, and ripped conditioning is pretty damn hard to beat. This side chest would be dangerous even among the first callout at the Mr. Olympia. I mean, the chest, the shoulder, the glute ham tie-in are all elite level. Plus, what I like is that he's the only one making an effort to flex the abs, so that adds an extra layer of detail that you don't see on anyone else here. Don't get me wrong, some of these other guys look good. Vailliere is massive through the upper body and has a great side leg, and De Asha is very full through the pecs and delts, but Hadi looks great. I'd say his biggest competition in this one is Osladil. I like the way he props his chest up in the old school Arnold fashion. That really helps make his whole upper body look full and massive, and I actually prefer his arms and certainly his calves over Hadi's. The chest could go either way depending on which posing style you prefer, but Hadi just whoops him when it comes to the shoulder and midsection, and his legs are definitely harder, so he still takes this one by a fairly large margin. Turning around into the back double biceps, this is the only time where I thought Choopan kind of faltered. He's surprisingly vulnerable in this one. I don't think his back looks particularly dominant. Nathan's looks pretty much just as detailed and thick, and Lukas Osladil is the best through the upper body in my eyes. Unfortunately, his flamboyant posing style kind of mars this one because frankly, the way he sticks his ass out like that is distracting and detracts from the pose. Call me crazy, but I don't think the glutes should be the focal point of a back double bicep. Not only that, but it seems like by hitting it that way, he sacrifices almost all definition through the hamstrings. This is an example of a bodybuilder's creative impulses kind of getting the better of him. Look, I'm all for artistic expression and individuality in bodybuilding, at least when it comes to the freestyle posing component. But when you're up there in a call-out line going through the 8 mandatories, just keep it simple, stick to the basics. There's no need to try and reinvent the wheel. I really believe Osladil's posing kind of hurts him more than it helps him in cases like this. In fact, I think he was actually the one pushing Hadi the most here in this competition, if we're being honest, and should have probably come in second since Nathan was a bit off and clearly holding some water. So this isn't me just blindly hating on the guy, it's just a bit of constructive criticism. Anyway, I'd probably still give Osladil the win here in the back double because other than the hamstrings and I guess the lack of quad sweep and maybe the glutes, which like I said are a bit too over the top, I think Lukas is better in pretty much every body part here. Nathan De Asha looks a little small in this one and has the worst lower body conditioning from the rear, while Vailliere is still too shallow through the back to be competitive here. The rear lat spread, however, is another knockout blow for Hadi. It's always interesting to me how certain guys can look outstanding in one of the back poses and thoroughly mediocre in the other. But anyway, here Hadi redeems himself big time. His back suddenly appears thicker and more detailed than anyone else's, and even his width is superior to all these ostensibly larger bodybuilders. When you include the hamstrings and glutes, this is a cakewalk for him. Second place would probably have to be either Lukas or Iain, who, like Hadi, fares much better now in the lat spread than he did in the back double. Side tricep is another obvious win for the Persian Wolf. From head to toe, there's not really a weak point on him. If we're being really nitpicky, you could argue that his glutes could be a little more separated, I guess, especially compared to Osladil's, whose are ridiculously shredded. But he's definitely the best of these guys overall. Osladil looks great in the lower body, but his elbow is too flexed to properly showcase the triceps. Nathan De Asha looks great through the arm, but is too smooth overall. And weight is too thick through the trunk and his arms are not big enough. Vailliere is definitely second here, as his execution is nearly perfect. My biggest complaint is that the tricep itself is not flexed enough. You don't see a clear-cut horseshoe like you do on Hadi, which is why Iain narrowly loses this one. Otherwise, he'd probably take it. And once again, we have another easy win for Mr. Choopan. Hopefully I'm not starting to sound like a broken record, but by now, you guys can probably appreciate just how thoroughly he dominated these open competitors. I mean, when you have the best set of abs and the best quads in the lineup, how can you possibly lose a pose like the abs and thighs? Nobody else is even close here, so let's just carry on to the final pose. And lastly, of course, we've got the most muscular. And wouldn't you know it, Hadi cleans up here as well. He's wide, the quads are big and separated, the abs are thick and sharp, and the chest is cross-striated all over. But what really blows my mind is the fact that even his delts look bigger than the likes of De Asha's or Vailliere's, who both have some of the best shoulders in men's open bodybuilding today. To be fair, both these guys probably beat him when it comes to the arms, at least from a mass perspective, and also the traps. But then again, when we go downstairs, the man in the middle's got the better wheels. And with this close-up, you can really notice the difference in conditioning. Hadi was just on another level in terms of the hardness, the graininess, and vascularity, and he certainly wasn't lacking for size. So yeah, all in all, a very convincing victory here for Hadi Choopan. Okay, so there you have it, guys, my rundown of the 2019 Vancouver Pro. This proved to be a surprisingly exciting show. Probably the best men's open lineup since the Arnold Classic, or the Arnold Classic Australia at least, back in the spring. And for this to take place at a smaller event like the Vancouver Pro up here in my home country of Canada, that was rather unexpected, but definitely in a good way. And I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that I hope Hadi Choopan is able to acquire that friggin' US visa so he can compete at the Olympia this year. Whether he decides to do the 212 or the Open, either way, it would be a win for bodybuilding fans everywhere. Because if he enters the Open, he should easily be able to crack the top 10. He could even pose a threat to the top 5 or 6, especially with the likely absence of Phil Heath, Big Ramy, and defending champ Sean Roden. And if he elects to stay in the 212 division, well, without Flex Lewis, he would have to be considered the automatic frontrunner and would probably be able to fend off any challenges in the form of Derek Lunsford, Kamal Algarni, or Ahmed Ashkenani. So anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed, and if so, please leave a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Until next time, this has been the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.